So, last night actually, Cyberpunk Jordan did a video where he talked about all the love interests that Sonic had been a part of outside of Sally when it came to Archie Sonic. And I have to say that he did a decent job. I mean, he gave his grade as to, how he felt about them, like where they ranked, and also gave his reasonings as to why they didn't work. Especially when he started off with this one, that being Sonic and Mina. Now, when it came to Sonic and Mina, he gave his reasonings as to why he liked it and how he felt it could have worked. He did, though, basically state that, the ship actually found its foundation in issue 76, and from then on in, with every few issues here and there, would continue to grow. I guess you could say the only disadvantage to it, though, that he pointed out, was it was happening at a time when Sonic was still technically with Sally. The only reason, though, it was being built up the way it was in story. Sally and Elias's brother, Sally's brother, I should say, father, King Max, had become injured and was out of commission as king. So, because Elias was the oldest and the second in line to be king, he temporarily took on the mantle. But here's the thing. Elias had no experience being king. So, to help him out, he decided to get an advisor. Unfortunately, that advisor was Geoffrey St. John. And Geoffrey basically gave him ideas and suggestions that favored him, that being St. John, more so than anything. And if you weren't paying attention to it very closely, especially if you were a long-time reader like me, you would have noticed that the only reason St. John was making all these suggestions and ideas for Elias to, make official, basically, was to make himself look good in front of the people and mostly the royal family, because at this time, St. John still carried a torch himself for Sally. So, again, if you weren't paying attention and reading between the lines, you could tell that what St. John was doing was trying to set himself up so that the royal family would probably give him their blessing, I should say, to be with Sally, even though he knew Sally still probably carried a torch for Sonic. So that is why this whole Sonic and Mina, ship, if you will, romance, flirtation and crush, kind of felt a little awkward and out of place around this time frame when it was really starting to take off. Mainly because of the fact that Sonic was still technically in a relationship with Sally, but because of the fact that Geoffrey St. John had set things up the way he did, it really wasn't helping out. And that is the truth. It really wasn't helping out whatsoever. But in the long run, thankfully, for any Sonic Sally fan, out there, myself included, and I say it with all due respect, the infatuation, the ship, didn't last long. Now, the thing with Mina, though, and her infatuation and crush on Sonic was very similar to Amy Rose. Amy Rose, in the eyes of a lot of fans, believed that since both her and Sonic were hedgehogs, that they were meant to be together. And if you follow the Amy Rose from the games and how that's kind of at times integrated into the comics, you could probably say that, it was because of her tarot cards, that basically led her to believe her and Sonic were meant to be. But mostly outside of that, it's because they're both hedgehogs, and, you can basically decide for yourself how that, is looked at from someone like Amy Rose's perspective. And how also it kind of fits in line with Mina. Because just like Amy, as I mentioned, felt that since her and Sonic were both hedgehogs, and that meant they were destined to be together, the same with Mina Mongoose. You see, Mina, during this entire storyline, developed and discovered that she had super speed just like Sonic. Now, in reality, naturally, mongooses are very fast animals, so to see that applied to her character in the comic, I thought was a good little twist. It would give her more of a reason to believe her and Sonic were meant to be. But, like I said, thankfully to a lot of fans, including myself, that didn't happen. Although they did tease the fact for a bit that she still had feelings for Sonic, it just wasn't like it used to be. especially when Sonic came back from space, back from the dead, around issue 130, or 129, 130, and it was revealed that in 134, Mina ended up with somebody else during Sonic's absence called Ash Mongoose, who started out as the manager for her band and eventually became her boyfriend, and would remain that way, for as long as the comic was in the pre-reboot stages, and then that was the last we saw of them. What's interesting, though, about Mina is that she would end up with somebody outside of Ash if you take into consideration the Mobius years later continuity as the legit future, or at least a what-if kind of future for the comic. Because I should say, hold on for a sec, guys, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. Hold on. Because in the Mobius years later storyline, again, if you take that into consideration as being a actual future of the prime continuity, or what if future of the prime continuity, Mina ends up with Tails. That's right, she ends up with Tails. And I know, that was a surprise to me. Even when Penders initially did the story, he said that the whole Mina and Tails pairing was meant to be a joke. He didn't think people would take it on so seriously, but since they did, they decided to incorporate it later on. Well, mostly Ian Flynn decided to incorporate it later on when he decided to continue the storyline. But yeah, Mina and Sonic's relationship, given any other time in the comic, I think and do agree it could have worked, even if it was temporary. The awkwardness, though, as I mentioned, was due to the fact that basically it was taking place at a time in the story where Sonic still had feelings for Sally, but it was because of Jeffrey St. John's meddling and stroking of his own ego and giving the wrong advice to a temporary king who had no experience that made this relationship between Sonic and Mina awkward. Not just for the fans, but in continuity in story for characters like Sally and others, because of the fact that, they weren't sure what the heck was going on here. Again, any other time, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I think it could have worked on a temporary basis any other time. But because it happened at such an awkward moment in the story, because of certain reasons, and again, if you didn't see that for yourself, then obviously you're not a longtime fan or haven't been paying close attention. If you didn't see that for yourself, then, I don't know what else to tell you. But yeah, I do agree with Jordan. I do agree that I think the relationship could have worked, had it been done temporarily at any other time. But that wasn't the only relationship that he talked about. Now, he did feel like it could work because it felt like there was something there, even afterwards. But it wasn't the only relationship he talked about that Sonic was involved in outside of Sally. The other relationship he talked about was Sonic and Fiona. Now, he didn't honestly understand where this all started. For all we knew, it was around 156 where it got discovered that Sonic and Fiona had hooked up, much to Tails' chagrin and anger, because of the fact that Tails, in story, still had feelings for Fiona. I mean, heck, when he caught them, he tried to basically, I guess you could say, talk some sense into her, or at least try to make her realize, hey, maybe we could do this, we're both foxes and everything, it could work. He tried to basically, tried to talk some sense into her in his mind that, hey, maybe, we can make this work. I mean, yeah, you're a little bit older, but it could work, stuff like that. But unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. And the reason she got together with Sonic, Penders and Bowlers didn't give a reasoning, whatsoever as to why it happened. But that's where Ian Flynn comes into play. See, Ian Flynn did give a reasoning. Not much of a reasoning, but hey, he inherited a comic that basically had to be cleaned up. So he had to figure out, okay, how do I explain this situation and try to move on. Well, he found a way. He basically said that in issue 150, 151, even though she wasn't there, for it, that she, probably was the only character out of all the girls that could see basically that Sonic wasn't acting like himself. And that this may not be really Sonic, but somebody else, maybe his doppelganger. And that's the reason she started to hook up with Sonic, because she was hoping maybe she could find some of the same characteristics in Sonic, the actual Sonic, that she found attractive in the doppelganger known as Evil Sonic, later known as Scourge. So yeah, that's the reasoning, basically. That's the reasoning why she hooked up with him. And Sonic's explanation as to why he hooked up with Fiona, well, as we found out in 179, his reasoning was, one, he was hoping by doing so that Tails would get over his infatuation with Fiona, because now she was with somebody else, someone that, he could trust, in his best friend, and that he just went with it like he did everything else, because he still hadn't really gotten over the loss of Sally, basically breaking things off with Sally. He hadn't gotten over that yet, at that time. So he just went with, whatever came natural, and anybody that, showed him a similar kind of affection, he just went with it. Even if it made sense or not, even if he felt it was going to, help out his friend, help them move on or not, he just went with it. And obviously he was wrong in his thoughts, in his decision. Like, well, if I start dating Fiona and go with her, we could become a couple, maybe Tails will get over it and he'll be accepting of it. Nope. You see, Tails still had feelings for Fiona. I mean, heck, Tails still did have feelings for Fiona even afterwards. I mean, anytime they met up, what happens? He couldn't bring himself to really fight her. He couldn't bring himself to fight her, or even, I don't know, talk to her or whatever. He couldn't do it because he still had feelings for her. And she knows it. And she knew it and everything. So the thing is, with Fiona, her hooking up with Sonic mainly was because she was trying to find similar attractions in him that she found in his doppelganger. And Sonic hooking up with her was because he was hoping it would get Tails to get over his crush and infatuation with her, but also because he just went with it like he did everything else, because he was still reeling over the breaking of things with Sally. Now, fortunately, Sonic wouldn't have to wait that much longer for him and Sally to be back together. True, it'd be about 42 issues afterwards, but still, he wouldn't have to wait too much longer. The point is though, yeah, them getting together, that was a surprise. It was a surprise, and I'm honestly going to admit to you guys, I think the reason Bowlers and Penders did it, mainly, is because, she has a similar design, believe it or not, to Sally. She has a similar design to Sally, and that I'm guessing Penders believed that people would accept that. Like, hey, she has a similar design like Sally. She could basically, be Sally when Sally's not there, kind of deal. But here's the thing: it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. Now, could it have been justified and remedied later on? Absolutely. I mean, if he had had the opportunity to write a redemption story for the character, which I truly believe he was probably heading towards before everything went downhill behind the scenes, then I think, yeah, it could have been redeemed. I think it could have been justified as to her reasoning as to why she was with Sonic. Why she, went with him and everything. And maybe they find out the real truth. Maybe it wasn't because, hey, I was trying to find the same attributes in you that I found attractive in your evil doppelganger. No. Maybe the truth would be that, she wanted to be with Sonic because basically she knew that Tails had feelings for her as well. And that she needed to find a way to avoid that. And maybe hooking up with Sonic would help and he would be understanding of it. Maybe that would have been a real reason. We don't know. But I think, honestly, Ian was probably going to do a redemption story that probably, in the long run, would have justified everything and redeemed everything for the character, and maybe even not only have her explain the real reason, that probably be similar to Sonic's reasoning, or identical almost, but maybe this time around actually give her the opportunity to go out with Tails and be like, you know what? Age shouldn't mean anything when it comes to love. We should just at least see what happens and go from there. And that's it. That's it. Maybe that could have happened. I don't know. But as far as Fiona goes, like I said, and Cyberpunk Jordan pointed it out, she, basically her reasoning was she was trying to find the same attributes in Sonic that she found in Evil Sonic, aka Scourge. And Sonic's reasoning, he was hoping it would help Tails get over his infatuation with Fiona, and he just went with it like he did everything else because he was still reeling, if you will, from breaking things off with Sally. But I think, honestly, I truly believe this, that if they wanted to, they could have honestly, and this is the truth, guys, they could have honestly, done a story to where she, got redeemed, and this whole situation would have been justified, and maybe her real reasoning would have been identical to Sonic's. Who knows? But yeah, I admit it did come out of nowhere, and I'll give them credit. They did try to make it work, but just like with the whole Mina thing, it was kind of awkward because here you had Sonic dating someone that his little brother, if you will, had a thing for, and yeah, that just didn't help out. And thankfully, Ian Flynn did kind of correct it. And as much as it might sound like, he was left with, with the scraps and everything to pick up, at least he gave, or at least he attempted to give a reasoning as to why both were dating each other. But then that brings us to the next one that he talked about. That being Sonic and Bunny. Now, Sonic and Bunny is an interesting scenario because it's one of those situations that, like I mentioned in a previous video, even after Bunny hooked up with Antoine and even got married and all that, there was still an attraction there. Like, there was still a flirtatiousness there between the two characters. Like, there was still a chemistry that could work between the two characters. I mean, yes, there was a bit of flirtatiousness in the early issues of the comic when Bunny first arrived on the scene, I should say. But even afterwards, Bunny basically, it wouldn't, be a natural flirtation, but it would be some kind of like attraction here and there. Like, you'd have your moments and everything. But, when Bunny hooked up with Antoine, it's like, okay, they steered away from that, as much as they could, the whole Bunny flirting with Sonic, attraction to Sonic kind of deal, because of course Sonic was with Sally. There was no doubt about that. But even afterwards, going back to what I mentioned during the Mina Mongoose portion of the video here, we had what was known as the high school errors. The high school error, if you will, where the characters were basically trapped. I wouldn't say trapped, but basically kept confined in Knothole Kingdom, as it was known then. And, there was times where Bunny and Sonic did have a bit of an attraction towards each other, but it wasn't much. It was more like flirtatiousness, if you will. And this was at a time Bunny was with Antoine. So it wasn't as, evident as it probably normally would be. But then, of course, afterwards, the post 134 slap situation, that's when you kind of start to see maybe something there. Now, putting 150 and 151 aside, okay, let's be honest, everybody knows that, that shouldn't have happened, especially with that one moment, because of the fact that that wasn't really Sonic, but that was the character that would be later known as Scourge impersonating him. Outside of that, you still had your moments. Like a couple of issues later, you had Sonic saving Bunny from being assimilated, and she kisses him on the lips and everything. And initially, the drawing was supposed to have Sonic with his eyes open in shock, but, instead it was with his eyes being closed and him accepting it. So they did kind of tease it a little bit. And even after, Antoine and Bunny got engaged and even married and everything, you had your moments. where they would work together, but there would also be that bit of chemistry that felt more like these two are naturally meant to be together, but they can't be because of various reasons. And you could see that. I mean, even in the engagement issue, what was it, 173? When Bunny and Sonic go to confront Mammoth Mogul and everything, and Noggs tries to sneak up from behind, what does Sonic tell Bunny? He says, bet 10, what is it? Bet you 10 rings, he's going to try to sneak up right behind us. And what does Bunny do? Lifts up her, robotic hand and says, probably, boom! Knocks Noggs out. That is natural chemistry. Like, they work perfectly off each other. And then, like I said, even after the marriage and everything between Bunny and Antoine, you had your moments. 217 and mostly 218 is a good example, in my opinion. I mean, heck, some people joke about the fact when, Bunny and Sonic both realize, hey, we both are right in what we're trying to, point out as to the reasoning as to why we have to do what we have to do. And then them coming together and realizing, you know what? It was easier. It was just still about us. Us, being the ones Eggman's after. And you get that little look on the faces like, ooh, okay, got an idea here and everything. Somebody at one time, joked about the fact, I don't know if it was a meme or in a comment, somebody joked about the fact of, Sonic, you got to be careful. Bunny's married here. She's now married. Be careful about this. But it was because of moments like that felt like, felt like that people believed, these two could have been more than just, best friends or comrades that work well off each other because of the chemistry. And it's evident. I mean, heck, you even have the story end with them holding hands walking back home or something like that. It's like, why would you have her hold hands with him if she's already married? You see what I'm saying? I think obviously some of these stories were meant to be published earlier, but because they weren't, they had to change them up a little bit to make them work within the current, continuity, current system. But you can tell just by that little moment, that some was being teased. And whether or not this was meant to be earlier, like I said, in Ian's run, storyline-wise, who knows? Who knows? Excuse me there. But yeah, you got moments like that and everything that kind of give off the vibes that, there was something there. There was something there even after Bunny ended up marrying Antoine. And even after Sonic got together with Sally. There is something there that, just gets fans, excited in a way to see what could have been. I mean, there are some fans, in their own, fictional stories and artistic works that basically put these two together. I mean, some fan, and you've seen this in some of my various videos, some fans even take that iconic scene from 130 where Sally is kissing Sonic. She has tears in her eyes because, there he is in the flesh. He's alive. While she's at his memorial, his gravesite, if you will. People have, changed that up to be artistically identical to that design, but by putting Bunny in the place of Sally. That's how much people like these two together. That's how much they like these two together. But fortunately, it didn't happen in a way that would have seen them be together temporarily. It was just teased, before, pre-134 slap, post-134 slap, app and all that. It was teased, and that was about it. But you could tell that no matter who the writers were, whether it was Penders, Bowlers, or Flynn, they knew what they were doing. They were testing the waters. Ladies and gentlemen. And by testing them, they probably found out that there were some fans that wanted to see these characters end up together in some way, even if it was an alternate timeline, if you will. But that wasn't the only one he talked about. He closed out with probably the one ship outside of Sonic and Sally that is the most talked about, most debated, and most beloved. And that, of course, is Sonic and Amy. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm totally fine with Sonic and Amy. Because, honestly, it all depends, in my opinion, on the media. That's right, the interpretation. You see, when I look at Sonic X, mostly the third season, I can accept Sonic Amy there. Because even though we see Amy's infatuation still very prevalent, if you will, it's throughout that season where she grows and shows how much she loves Sonic and everything by nearly sacrificing herself on one or more occasions. That to me is character growth and something that you could tell in a way that Sonic would be willing to accept as a potential girlfriend. Now, Sonic Boom, they did kind of flirt with it, that both found each other attractive, both had feelings for each other, but they just didn't want to really admit it because of the fact that, hey, maybe it's reputation, they didn't want to lose the cool factor, whatever. But you could tell it was there, and it worked. It worked. Then, of course, you have Sonic Prime, you have games like Sonic Frontiers, you have the IDW comic, and these are various interpretations of Sonic media with Amy in there that definitely show that Sonic Amy, even through little moments here and there, can work and work correctly. Heck, even the Archie Sonic, version of, the characters, have shown it could work correctly. 222, for example. Amy Rose shows a Amy Rose. Hold on for a second. Almost got tongue-tied there. But Amy Rose shows a huge literal character leap in development, when she basically accepts Sonic being with Sally, saying that as long as Sonic's happy, that's all that matters to her. And, she even maturely, believes and accepts the fact that even if Sonic and Sally doesn't last forever, eventually Sonic is going to come to her. And she'll wait as long as need be for that to happen. And that to me is a show of maturity, of character development. Even when they're chasing after, the Death Egg Mark II, doing the World Tour II, Death Egg Mark II Mecha Sally arc to get Sally back, she's putting her friendship with Sally above any feelings she has for Sonic. Even if it means Sonic being back together with Sally, that's all that matters to her is rescuing her friend. And that is a huge level of maturity, a maturity that someone like Sonic could accept. So to me, I don't have a problem with it if it's done right. And like I said, Sonic X, the IDW comics, Sonic Boom, Sonic Frontiers, and Prime have all shown that this could be done and done right. So I don't have a problem with it, whatsoever. And outside of Sonic and Sally, I'd be willing to accept it, as a full-on relationship with Sonic. I mean, Sonic and Sally is still going to be my number one ship. There's no doubt. Still going to be my number one ship. Don't get me wrong. In the overall Sonic media. But outside of that, I'll be willing to accept Sonic and Amy, as an alternative if need be. But yeah, I believe it can work, and we've had various examples that it can. So, in closing, first of all, I want to apologize if the audio may have been a little awkward here, or if I sounded like I was rambling a little bit and going all over the place. I'm just getting over a little bit of an allergy cough, and also the fact that I'm still waking up. It's still early for me, so I do apologize for that. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here, give my response to Cyberpunk Jordan's video, and my thoughts on the various ships outside of Sonic and Sally that he talked about, and how he felt about them, by giving my reasonings and everything. But let me know what your reasonings are. Comment down in the live chat as well as during the comments, as well as in the comments, I should say, and as well as during the live chat, like I mentioned. Also, check out Cyberpunk Jordan's initial video that caused me to do the response here. And until next time, guys, you know where to support me. The link's down below to every place you can support me at this time of unemployment that I'm in currently. Would be greatly appreciated if you can click on them. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you all later, but give me your thoughts. How do you feel about each of the ships outside of Sonic and Sally that I talked about, that Cyberpunk Jordan talked about? Give me your thoughts in the live comments as well as in the comments below. Again, I do apologize for the video being kind of all over the place. This is how I roll. I do things unscripted most of the time without bullet points, and I just go with it. But let me know what your thoughts are, and until next time, talk to y'all later.